Good morning from RSAC. This is Doug White with Security Weekly. I'm glad you're there watching, and we're doing interviews today. So I'm here. You're obviously watching, but maybe you're going to come over tomorrow or who knows what. I am with Jawahar Sivasankaran, who is the president of Cyware. Jawahar has 25 years of experience. It's always nice to meet people that have a lot of experience. Growth leadership, customer success at Cisco, Splunk, AppGate, and that's pretty cool. So basically what you told me was that your basic idea was that customers and markets are moving on towards a more threat-centric approach to basically try to solve their SecOps challenges, was my take on this whole thing. And you said that the traditional, and this was where it immediately rang with me. So I was reading this, and then I get to this point, I'm like, okay, now I know. Because you said that the problem is that trying to ingest these large volumes of data, analysis, and actions was like a problem. And so I always remember when I first started, I was working at the computer center, and they told me that when I came in every day, I was supposed to sign off on this giant waist-high stack of green bar that was all the log entries from the preceding night. And I was like, how am I supposed to go through all this? And they're like, oh, nobody looks at it, just sign it. And then today, of course, it's become astronomical, right? So I guess the first kind of thing was how do you see the traditional SecOps stuff changing as we go forward?
Yeah, Doug, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh,
first
thank
of
you.
all, the first thing I would say is right out of the gate, Cyware, we operationalize threat intelligence. That's what we do. We drive other things like collective defense, which is operationalizing threat intelligence, but we also have the opportunity to share that threat information in a collaborative way, and that's what we drive with the organizations that we work with. But taking a step back, I've been in this industry for 27 years, taking a step back, there was a time and place for some of the legacy tools that we have in the SOC today. But that is changing. I mean, predominantly the big thing that you see is it was large troves of data ingested into the system, and then you do some analysis on that, and then you prioritize the action that you take. Sometimes it's manual, sometimes it's automated, but that was not the right thing to do, even at that time. But hey, it solved the purpose at that given time. But fast forward right now, what we need in the market is security operations should evolve. Definitely AI is playing a big role with that, especially around automation. Cyware is doing quite a bit of things around AI and automating threat intelligence. But the key that we are seeing in the marketplace is that legacy approach is changing to a more threat-centric approach. And this is where Cyware comes into play, where we operationalize that threat intelligence that's coming from disparate sources. It could be commercial feeds, it could be OSINT feeds coming in, it could be custom feeds. A lot of times we do work with industries where there are custom threat information that gets fed into the system itself, and then how do we make sense of that? How do we operationalize that? That's where Cyware comes into play.
So the first part of this is, of course, the sensor data. I mean, that's just the bottom line of like, I've got sensors, and so you've got to ingest that. And then the part, I mean, I understand that part, but the parts I've had trouble with are the feeds. So how much threat intel should I be getting from, say, external sources that are coming in so that to give me advice? I mean, that would be probably one of my questions.
Yeah, Doug, the short answer is it really depends. So if you're a large Fortune 50 enterprise, or if you're a large organization on the government side, you most likely, what we end up seeing is multiple feeds coming in, threat feeds coming in.
Absolutely.
Right? And then the real need is making sense of those threat feeds coming in and then operationalizing them. This is all about collecting that threat information, enriching that information with the right information that we have, indicators of compromises, IOCs, that we need to enrich the right way. But then what do you do with that? What do you do with that process? How do you prioritize the action that you got to take on the other side? And what becomes important is how do you do the orchestration the right way? Even before you start automating some of these things, let's talk about orchestration of that outcomes that you want to drive. And sometimes it's not just the security teams that are benefiting from that orchestration. Where we are driving is a true hyper-orchestration framework, which is faster, more efficient in the market. But how do you orchestrate that and eventually, hey, you want to automate some of those tasks?
Yeah, because I think you can't automate before you understand.
Exactly.
That's incredibly dangerous in my experience.
Oh,
Because
totally.
if I just start pushing buttons and say, tick this box, I don't really know what I'm seeing. So yeah, so I've struggled with that because like I say, sensor data, I got it. I understand what's happening, but you start telling me about dark web threat intel, patch intel, OSINT, all this stuff. So Cyware is processing that big block, and it's bringing that to me, and then what I go in and organize it by what I think is important, because obviously the answer is always it depends, and then it starts processing. I mean, so give me a little bit more guidance on that.
Part of it is you as the organization using the threat intelligence platform, or where we've evolved is beyond the legacy tips, if you will, more into threat intelligence management and operationalizing that. So really depends on how you want to get those sources in, and we've made it easy for us to automate that threat information coming in. And what we have done recently, this is a couple of months back, pretty new here, we do have a partnership with a leading threat intelligence feed provider, Team Cymru, if you've not heard about them. What we have done is we've integrated them with our threat intelligence platforms. Essentially what customers do get is a unified threat intelligence platform, or what we call as a CTI program in a box. So if you're not one of those super large customers, but you're still big, you do need a threat intelligence program, but you've never had your hands wrapped around it, we've created that opportunity for those organizations to get started or mature their existing CTI program with this integration that we launched a couple of months back. And the beauty of that is it's pre-packaged, pre-integrated, specific use cases that customers can deploy right out of the box. And the value realization is literally in a matter of weeks, right? And we've had customers where we've turned them on literally within a matter of days. So it's not years, it's not months for you to see the value coming out of a CTI program. We've packaged it so that it's simplified, and the results are seen pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time I was seeing threat intel, and it was very eclectic. I mean, there were all these different sources. I mean, for a while there were no sources. It was just like, okay, I gotta go look. But then you started seeing sources who would come to you and say, we would sell you this. But even then, the data was not very standardized. It was just coming in all kinds of forms. And I think we're seeing a move toward standardization of that data. And I'll use a really dated example for it, but there used to be some tools that you could set up to filter your web stuff. And I know this has nothing to do with what you're doing, but you could literally go in there and say, here's a category of things I don't want to allow, like pornography was a category. And I think we're trying to get over into that kind of realm where we can say these are these threats and these are those threats, and we can choose the things that best fit what we need to do. Would you agree with that?
It's a simplified example of what we do.
It's an absolute simplified example, but
abstracting that out. So again, threat intel feeds can come in any shape and form, right? Multiple shapes and forms, open source, OSINT, commercial feeds. And again, what we are increasingly seeing is with specific sectors that we continue to work is custom feeds coming in, right? Or custom objects that are coming in, right? Based on really that particular vertical or industry or sector that we are working with. So where we drive value, as I said, is operationalizing that threat intelligence, and that was the threat intel piece. But where the threat intel market itself is going, and Cyware is leading this charge, is it's not just the threat intelligence platform, the traditional CTI, the cyber threat intelligence, but we're also seeing convergence of exposure management, convergence of some of the DRP functionalities coming into this broader platform. Just last week, timely for RSA, we launched the addition of compromised credential management to that unified threat intelligence platform. So again, we can help our customers look for compromised credentials in the open web, deep web, dark web. And then one of the things that we can also do is automate the response with integration with IAM tools, right? So again, there's a lot of convergence that's happening, and Cyware is leading that charge.
No, I like that, because I mean because that's one of my great fears, is that you have you have somebody who's an employee, and I talk about this all the time, and even though they didn't get compromised here, we're safe. But they got compromised on some website that they went to 6 months ago, and they used the same credentials, and now that's just an automatic breach. And it's really hard to defend against that. And trying to tell employees to go out and look for that, it's easy to say, it's really tough to do.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you even begin?
Exactly.
I used to work where the company had 35,000 employees. How many of those people got breached yesterday?
Yeah.
And now I'm supposed to supervise that, and I'm back to this giant pile of paper that I'm somehow supposed to review.
Yeah.
So this is automating that component as well.
That component as well. And the key here is that you've got a lot of solutions that do just the compromised credential management. You also have solutions out in the market that do dark web monitoring, that do social media monitoring, all of that. But how do you integrate that with your cyber threat intelligence? That becomes critical, and this is where we're driving
and that's
value.
what you're doing.
This is where we're driving value, and that compromised credential launch last week was exactly that. And again, this is taking into the realms of exposure management and other things in DRP.
Yeah, I think you're going to have something like that, because for a while, several years ago, you were getting a lot of pings from people saying, we can analyze the dark web for you, we can watch for certain phrases. And I always get back to, will I have time to go through this data? Because I know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I know what'll happen to me is I'm going to say, I'm going to go through that in a little while.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't tend to work for Fortune 500, so if you're working for a smaller company, you don't have a crew of 100 people to say, okay, you do this and I'll do that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, those routers went down this morning, I'm going to be off site. And yeah, now nobody's looking at that. So it sounds useful.
That's what it is. And where this all leads in is the impact of AI with security operations and cyber threat intelligence. So, and again, this is one of those things where we are really charging the market ahead, if I can put it that way, within the cyber threat intel space. So we've got things in place on the truck where customers can use Cyware Quarterback for chatbot knowledge base, but where we are taking this is towards a multi-agent strategy, right? This is where the agentic approach comes into play, where can we automate a lot of the traditional security operations functions, and it's not just automating for the sake of automating, but backing that with strong cyber threat intelligence, what we see. And then the other part where we're also truly proud of is, what do we do with that bi-directional sharing of threat intelligence? I mean, we work with ISACs, almost all the major ISACs, but that is very, very important for everybody in the industry, right? Where we need to share threat intelligence to stay ahead of the adversaries. We don't do that enough as an industry, I'm saying. And again, this is one of the things that at Cyware, we're super proud of what we are doing.
I'm happy to hear you say that, because it was something we've been advocating for a long time, that we ran into a brick wall. Back in like 2005, I was trying to help the state police try to coordinate that kind of stuff. And it was mostly targeted, not again at big players, but at medium and small businesses. And there just was no intel there. And they couldn't afford to put a team on it. And so fusion centers, ISACs, that kind of stuff was starting to come together. And it needs to be bi-directional. I was happy to hear you say that. Tricky business though, because the minute you start saying, I'm going to share, everybody starts getting a little bit nervous.
We create the right rules, we create the right framework for organizations to share that, that threat information.
I think that's,
But again, where we need to, go is that collective defense, where the industry comes together. And again, we're super proud of the work that we're doing today, partnering with the ISACs.
How do you vet this stuff? I mean, it's a little bit of an odd question, but I was thinking about it in terms of poisoning and AI poisoning and all these kind of things. How do you look at all this intel and ensure that it's valid? I mean, I always worry about that.
Yeah, one thing is the intel coming in, we want to make sure that it's coming from the right sources, as we look through this. But then as we go through the enrichment, as we look at the correlation of events that we're looking, within the CTI framework itself, and then the other things, as I mentioned, like compromised credential coming into the CTI framework, we're able to drive the right outcomes. Either it's
Okay.
the orchestration part, and again, this is where I get really excited. Even before the automation, it's the orchestration that becomes super critical, right? And again, a lot of times orchestration happens within the security teams, but there are also times, hey, you need to orchestrate the right playbooks outside of security, right?
Yes.
It could be with the endpoint team, it could be with some other team across IT.
It has to be.
And that drives the right outcome for you to leverage a multi-agent or an
Absolutely.
agentic AI approach.
Because again, as a security team, I have to be able to get that to the right people and make sure they take the right actions as a result of that intel, and we have to do it fast.
Correct.
Because AI is making everything get scarier quicker.
That's right.
And the threats from, I mean, just like you see stories about people didn't patch stuff, from Windows 7 or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, we have to try to move that time horizon way up close to the front, or we're going to have real trouble in the future. All right. Well, thank you, Jawahar.
Very good.
If you want to request a demo at www.cyware.com/book-a-demo or securityweekly.com/Cyware RSAC, you can check this out and get a demo of Cyware so you can see for yourself what this is going to do for you.
Thank you, Doug. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Pleasure.